everybody. Today I am coming to you with a really quick video on how you can figure out what the root cause of conflict is. And before I do that, I think that somebody wants to say hello. Alexander is home with me today, and apparently he just has to get in on the action. So sorry for that interruption. Let's talk about conflict. So back to what I was saying. One of the reasons that I like to talk about conflict in the sense of identifying the root cause is because I believe if you can name it, you can solve it. And when it comes to resolving conflict, the very first thing that you want to do is be able to identify, why does this conflict even exist? Now, in yesterday's video, I had talked a little bit about when conversations become tough, or in other words, when a situation starts to have conflict. And I define conflict as any situation that makes you feel uncomfortable. Apparently, Alexander is crying in the background because he is uncomfortable right now trying to have a difficult conversation with me. Okay, so first thing when it comes to identifying the root cause of conflict is I want you to think about conflict as being a triangle. And I call this triangle the Bermuda Triangle of conflict because I see so many people get lost in it. We focus on things that don't matter. We focus on issues that really aren't issues. And so if you can actually take this triangle and then pinpoint what is the root cause of your conflict, then you have your first starting point in resolving it. So at the top of your triangle, the first reason that conflict exists is because there's a difference of opinion. And a difference of opinion looks like this. Your boss comes in and says, hey, we've got a problem. You say, I think a solution is this. Susie says, I think the solution is that. All of a sudden, you've got a difference of opinion and conflict exists. Difference of opinion can also be that you have a different value set than somebody. Difference of opinion can also be that you have different world views. And so in other words, you think that the world should run this way. Another person says, oh my gosh, I can't believe that. No, I really think that this is the right way to run the world. And so when you think of that first root cause of conflict, the first reason that it exists is because there's a difference of opinion. The second reason that conflict exists, and this can go in one of the other corners of your triangle, is because there are high stakes involved. And high stakes can look a lot of different ways. So first off, let's say that word on the street is that your company isn't making sales, and if they can't make sales, then they're going to have to make job cuts. Well, the high stake in this situation is your job. And what's interesting about high stakes like this is all of a sudden you start thinking to yourself, oh my gosh, if I lose my job, I can't pay my mortgage. If I can't pay my mortgage, then all of a sudden I'm going to become homeless. And if I become homeless, I die. And what's hard about difficult situations like this is that when high stakes like that are involved, every single thing becomes conflict. Maybe it's a difficult conversation with somebody that matters tremendously to you that you've been avoiding. The reason is because the high stake is that you're going to lose that relationship. Now, high stakes doesn't just have to be, I'm going to lose my job or I'm going to lose my partner. It can also look like this. You have worked really, really hard to be an expert in your area. And then all of a sudden, I am so sorry. All of a sudden, somebody comes up to you and they say, hey, I read your report from last month, and just so you know, there are 3 errors. And all of a sudden you become incredibly defensive. You can't deny the errors. They are there, but you become defensive. The reason is because the high stake involved is your reputation. So that's what high stakes look like. And the third reason that conflict exists, and this can go in the bottom other corner, is because there's high emotion. And the thing about high emotion is that emotion has reason that reason knows nothing of. You are having a seemingly normal conversation with somebody. You say one thing and they absolutely positively lose their mess. And you are like, oh my gosh, I don't even know what happened. We were just having this normal conversation and then all of a sudden they flew off the handle. Usually when there is high emotion involved, it is because somebody has touched on something that matters tremendously to you. So I will give you an example. You just saw my very beloved Alexander Hamilton, and what a lot of people don't know about Alexander is about 1.5 years ago, I decided to trade my husband in for a puppy. And so when it came to bringing Alexander into my world, there was a really, really big backstory. And it's not a backstory that I share with a lot of people, but there is one there. And I was doing a training in Kansas City, and everybody in my training knew that I had a mini golden doodle. And we had to do this listening exercise. And in this listening exercise, I had to participate because there was an odd number of people, and what I had to do was sit in 60 seconds in silence and listen to some person talk, and I couldn't interrupt. And as I was listening to this person talk, she kept going on and on and on about how she had no idea how somebody could buy a mini golden doodle when there were so many rescue dogs out there. And just how could I spend that money and think about all the other things that I could have purchased with that money. And as this was happening, I was about to lose my mess. And the reason is because she had touched on something that matters tremendously. Like this little man here, Alexander. Now, what's interesting about this situation is that if you were from the outside looking in and you asked yourself, I wonder if that woman meant to offend Marianne, I'm going to bet that you would come to the conclusion that no, absolutely not. She was sitting there talking to a stranger. The only thing she knew about this stranger was that she had this beautiful mini golden doodle, and she just didn't understand why somebody would spend that kind of money on a dog. And so anyhow, the thing about high emotion is that usually these conversations get started and they get escalated, and really it's can be really difficult to figure out specifically what it was that they touched on that made it so highly emotional. Now, what's interesting about this is there's usually always a root cause to conflict. Now, that root cause may, in fact, cause a different reason for conflict to escalate. So let's say that you have a situation that's a difference of opinion and you really can't see this other person's point of view, and so all of a sudden you feel like you can't maintain emotional control. You might say to yourself, well, the reason that conflict exists in that situation is because there's high emotion. But if you dig a little bit deeper, no, there was high emotion because the situation just got very, very heated over a difference of opinion. And so what I'm going to challenge you all to do is I want you to think about a recent situation that you've had that made you uncomfortable. And I want you to ask yourself, if I had to pick out what the root cause of that conflict is, what was it and why did it get me so upset? Anyhow, that is my conflict resolution video for today. Please do not forget, all of you Lincoln and Omaha people, that we have the conflict resolution or the tough conversation workshop coming up on February 28th at the Foundry in downtown Lincoln. And I'm really, really looking forward to that. And so I have limited the number of seats to 20. And I am absolutely positively capping it at that. It is $97, but when we keep the silence to keep the peace, we start a war inside of ourselves. And I think that $97 is a small price to pay to get back your peace. So tomorrow I am coming to you all with a very special message for the men out there. Usually my conflict resolution classes are resolved to women only, but this time I am opening it up to men as well. And so from the bottom of my heart, I will have a special message for you all. So anyhow, I am going to go figure out what difficult thing Alexander Hamilton needs to say to me. And until then, I will see you all tomorrow. Bye, y'all.